So with that, let me get set up for the problem set 10, problem solving with the ChatGPT o3. So at this point, this is really it's well serving two purposes. One, this is a regular session. I do need the material to cover, and at this point, I've covered basically everything. The first couple weeks of me doing first couple years of me doing these virtual class sessions since like 2019, 2020. Really the biggest thing was filling in the gaps. There are some topics where my recorded in-person lecture videos didn't quite cover everything the way I wanted to, so I needed to fill in those lectures. I've filled in most of those. If there's any feedback, topics that people would like to know more that I didn't cover, then great, let me know. That's something I can do in the future. I've done those. In the last few couple of years, I've been just doing all the homework questions, and I think I do want to add more homework questions and do more homework questions. So that'll be some sort of ongoing thing. But for this semester, I didn't really have any material to cover other than to play with the ChatGPT. So let me do that with the problem set 10. I'll do that maybe 20, 30 minutes. And as I was describing, I'll switch to problem set 11. Need to turn into test student and place where we are in the semester. Oh, I must have unlocked everything. All right, so we are all set here. Let me bring up ChatGPT. And um, let me start with my the usual prompt. So you've seen me do this many times. I don't need to do this thing of pasting a question and having ChatGPT just to answer it without me any prompting. I don't need to do that. Although I guess I'm not sure why I'm doing that. But if you simply ask a ChatGPT, it'll just answer it. And frankly, doing it that way, you won't learn anything. Or like you might actually read it through it and you might think you understood it, and for something simple like this, maybe, then sure. No. But for more involved questions, maybe this is also simple enough. There's different levels of learning and understanding things. The highest level, I think, is so. I mean, so understanding may be one thing, but in terms of like retaining information, there's a level at which it's recognition, and there's a level at which it's a cold recall. And so you might recognize things. You might read something and think, "Oh yeah, I knew that." You might think that to yourself, but if you've tried to memorize anything, you should know that it's recognizing some phrase is different from when you don't have anything to remind you to just recall it is different. And it's something similar applies to problem solving. You might read someone working through a solution and think that all of them make sense, but when you try to do it yourself, at least I found for the materials that I didn't already know, yeah, having seen someone else do it before and feeling like I understood it is not a guarantee that I actually understood it. Really, the true test is when you look at the question, can you just do it yourself without any help, without any reference to anything? So to ChatGPT, I need to give it this prompt so they won't give me solutions right away. So I'll say, "Hi, the um, for the future questions, I really need to make sure that I know how to do those questions without any help. So please don't give me answers right away. I'll tell you what I've done so far and ask for your help for the immediate next step. Uh, Maybe the one stuck on. Um, um, Help me with just the next step. I'm preparing for a one-on-one meeting with my advisor, advisor, and he won't let me use any help other than our textbook open. Stacks University Physics volume. And it'll acknowledge. And just to test, so let me do the same thing again. Just copy and paste in the question, and it should not give me answer right away. Yeah. So next, the logical step. Sometimes it still gives you too much help. So here, really the thing you need is the relationship between frequency and period. Will it give it right away? Is oh wow, yeah. All right. So I'm acting a little slower than I ought to, but because I think most of you know this is period, and maybe you need a reminder of the relationship between period and frequency. But you know what? Let's just say we literally pasted this question because I didn't do any reading. I'm completely lost. That's why I did that. And the ChatGPT is asking this is and let's say so let's say I'm play acting someone who haven't done any reading. So I'll say, sorry, I didn't read the textbook at all. What's the difference between period and frequency? And you know, ChatGPT can be helpful actually for something like this because you know sometimes this is with the human tutors, including me. Sometimes it's a matter of test of patience. The best tutors are infinitely patient. They will never get upset with you. And I don't know if I was ever that, even when I was working at volunteering at a student learning center at UC Berkeley. But ChatGPT will be infinitely patient, explain everything as long as you ask. So one full back and forth vibration is one cycle. Wow, it's starting exactly where I started the lecture. I do start with the description of a cycle. That's really the most basic thing that should be so intuitive that you don't need to define it. And then period is the time, okay. And the frequency is the rate at which, and yeah, it's giving you all that. Okay. All right. So the number they gave us is in seconds. So that's period, and I need to take the reciprocal of it for the frequency answer. And I think verbalizing things like this might help you remember, you know, if you didn't know what period and frequency was, and you know this a reminder to yourself. I do there's like a context where I volunteer doing the audio visual stuff, and sometimes you just say things out loud so that you are reminding yourself of what you're doing. Otherwise, your hand does things that your brain didn't want you to do. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So can I do this in my head? I can get close. So 1 over 2.7 will be like close to 0.4. So it should be close to 400. And 2.7 is about 10% higher. So the frequency should be lower. So maybe 360. Let's guess a 370 hertz. Yeah. Close enough. Within 1% of the correct answer. Um, This kind of mental method trick, by the way, when I was doing research, experimental research, it's this kind of mental method trick that's actually most useful. Because when it's done right, it's faster than finding a calculator, typing numbers in there, and in the context where rough numbers are good enough, it's quicker and more efficient. Also, it's a good exercise, mental exercise. All right, let me find a couple of substantial questions and do those substantial questions instead of asking, like, you know. So this is actually a pretty easy question because you're trying to change a period from increase it by a factor of 1 point, no, 2.5. So I mean, I'll just say things out loud. So the angular frequency is a square root of uh, k over m, or the period is proportional to square root of m over k. So to increase the period, I need to increase the mass. I'm trying to increase the period by a factor of 2.5, um, which square root of 2.5, that's a little harder. I think about 1.5 something ish, 1.6. So I need to multiply this by 1.6. So that's 0.9 or so. So I might say you need to add, I don't know, 0.3 kilograms, maybe. No, I'm doing something wrong. Maybe. Period. No, I need to square it. I need to square 2.5. So that's um, 5.25 maybe. 5.25. So multiply that with that. So that's like 2.5-ish. So maybe 2 kilogram close. So I'll guess 2 kilogram. It says it's wrong. I'll do a bit of a parameter search around that. Maybe. I don't know. Sorry, this is the trap I fall into. So let me ask ChatGPT. So let's say I got close, but didn't quite get it right. I can ask ChatGPT. So I thought, so for this question, I found a formula in the textbook. Gave up and decided to read it after all. It says period is proportional to um, square root of mass. So to increase the period by a factor of 2.5, I thought I needed to increase the mass by a factor of 2.5 squared. So wouldn't adding 2.0 kilogram to 0.5 kilogram do that? Um, ChatGPT will probably validate the correct parts of my reasoning process. And it might point out that this is close, but a little bit off. Right proportionality, yeah, right all that, right all that. Oops. Yeah, I did paste in. Good. There's that. Subtract. Yeah. Um, I did that. Can you double check my numbers? Didn't do it, but yeah, I'm just gonna lie to ChatGPT. Um, yeah, this is what I would call if I saw something like this. Oh, you must have made a calculator error because your reasonings are fine. You should result in correct answer, but this is not correct enough. Maybe you are rounding too aggressively. I see that sometimes. You should almost never round to less than three significant figures because even when significant figure rules say you should have two or one, what's the harm of one extra significant figure? Yeah. So yeah, that was a lot farther off than I thought I would be. All right, I got it. I think I calculated 2.5 squared is 5.25, but was it 6.25? And I'm not actually calculating. I'm going by memorized numbers, and some of the numbers I don't have quite correctly memorized. Um, I think that's it. I thought 2.5 squared is 5.25, but must be 6.25. Is that right? Maybe. Refuse to pull out a calculator. Yeah, okay, good. All right. Or actually do the calculation properly. So it's fine. There's a pendulum question that if I got it in this set, so I've done it twice in two different ways. And first time I did it, my students didn't like it and wanted me to use calculus to do it. Let me ask that question of ChatGPT, and if ChatGPT will, answer it. I don't think I got that question. Um, let's see. Maybe. I'm just gonna regenerate the question to see if. Yeah, it's this question. So I guess one of the reasons why students didn't like my more brute force method could be that it's not the method that the hint guides you towards, because this was written by one of my colleagues and his approach was different from mine. From my perspective, it's like with the propagating errors at our level, for calculation like this, it's really a lot easier to just go through a bunch of numbers. I mean, you can use these calculus approaches, and you do get really a lot simpler expression. But um, it, it's I guess if I imagine doing this 5 times, then sure, let's use calculus, derive a formula. But if you're just gonna do it once, it's easier to just plug in numbers. So let me ask a ChatGPT. So I asked around for help with this question, and I'm getting a bit of conflicting advice. Where would you start with this question? Let's see if ChatGPT will guide me towards this approach, calculus based, or my intuitive approach where you just plug in numbers. Yeah, we'll see. ChatGPT might go towards calculus-based answers because it's easier to explain. Maybe I don't know. Um, Calculate, or you could use scaling argument. That would actually be a improvement. That would be better, I think. One civil is that. Okay, gaining means that. Okay. What fraction? Yeah, that tiny fraction is that. Okay. Calculate the small number first. The pendulum relation is. We'll tell you how that connects. Okay, so let's say, yeah. All right, I gotta stop refusing to number. I know I can't do that in my head. So, okay, 2.15 divided by 86 400. So, for the ratio of time, I get 2.49 times 10 to the minus 5 as the um I'll put minus sign as the delta t divided by t. So is dl divided by l, dl divided by l the same fraction? um so 2.49 times 10 to the minus 3%. And it might guide me towards the scaling argument, which is that given that the relationship involves a square root, so the L needs to, there's a square involved there, so I need to double it. Um, Close square root dependence, yeah, small change gives, yeah, yeah, so I need to double it. So if I say 5e minus 3%, that should give me the correct answer. Yeah. And you actually had a lab like this, which was it? I think that was your very first lab, Intro to Physics lab. And I said you had an exercise where you have an error in the radius of a ball, you calculate the volume, and if you had like 1% error on the diameter measurement, the volume had a 3% error. And as I was grading, I told a lot of people who got that result, there's a calculus reason for it. And so let me ask the question of ChatGPT. All right, I got the question. Um, but I don't understand where you got the fraction one uh, from. And my tutor keeps telling me there's a calculus reason while refusing to elaborate. And ChatGPT will probably give you the calculus reason that you take the derivative and all that. Maybe. haven't asked this question, exact question. There's the calculus region. There's two short transparent steps. Yeah, chain rule. Ah, sure. You're taking derivative. So yeah, that's the relationship. Yeah, yeah. You really, it's the proportionality that matters. The constant, you can ignore it. You can all wrap it into a single constant to ignore for the rest of the argument. Take the derivative, or I mean, it's the same deal. Yeah, this is fine. Um, so yeah, and then you substitute in this. That'll allow you to cancel out some stuff, and this factor of 1/2 basically comes from the exponent. So, thank you. And I think this set is pretty easy. And for those who've been, those students who are, trying to meet the minimum standard for B, I think around this time in the semesters when I switched to telling them, hey, if you've been having trouble getting through homework for the other areas, oscillations and waves, I've seen people focus on these and do that. It's not my default advice because, how late in the semester this is, and it's um, it's just making things more risky than it needs to be. But anyways, so most of the questions are super easy. If I were asking you oscillations and waves questions, basically all these other questions are so easy that I really want to ask. Basically, you get the right formula and then bam, you have the answer. The most I can get is probably like question 10. There's a bit more involved method here. So let me just ask ChatGPT for a starting place, and let me see if it gives you a good starting place, and then I'll move on. You basically need the mathematical description of the simple harmonic oscillator, which you can just memorize from the textbook, or know where in the textbook to look up. Where would you start for this question? And you should write down basically a trig function version of the position as a function of time based on the information given. And then velocity is the derivative, acceleration is derivative of velocity. And then, yeah, all right. That's easy, easy. I don't have the XT formula. Do you have it? As if it's something that only one person can have at a time. Oh, yeah, that's the expression. Yeah, that's a standard displacement form. And yeah, and if you have written this down, I might ask, okay, what does A stand for? What does omega stand for? What does phi stand for? And so on. It's kind of easy. Some questions will require you to use a conservation of energy. But depending on your luck, you might not get that question at all. That's, I guess, if you are lucky. Yeah, maybe this. I think this one involves energy, but then it's easy because it's just um yeah, it's from given this information you have starting the spring potential energy, and that's basically this. So I think that's probably enough for this set. I've asked ChatGPT enough, and I've demonstrated enough how you can work through this set with the ChatGPT's help. In a way, you are not just copying and pasting in answers where you're trying to learn, with being mindful that this is kind of a simple set, so it might there might not be much learning to do. But you could ask this question. Something like a summary, like what you could review, what you could maybe put on a index card and try to memorize. There aren't that, so far in this class, there weren't that many formulas I would tell you to memorize. But as you get into oscillations and waves, there are formulas that are really useful to have memorized. So you could ask a ChatGPT something like this. All right, I finished working through the oscillations set, and I'm Still a little worried that my understanding is a bit shaky. Too much hunting for formulas in the textbook. Can you give me um, summary, um, something that I can put on an index card of notes and review later to test myself? Summary. Yeah, yeah, I'll leave it there. I could have been more specific and say summary of simple harmonic oscillators, but I think a ChatGPT might give me right scope of the topics from this description alone. Just the word oscillations and the kinds of questions I've been asking. Maybe. Yeah, one index card recap. Now, so again, I think with each step that you bypass, you do have to be wary. How much of this would you understand, remember, memorize? Um, kind of doing this summarization work yourself is really what I'd recommend because that's what would help you remember. But let's say you've already done that and you are worried that you might have forgotten something important. Then you can ask a ChatGPT for this and then compare, what did you forget as you are trying to, summarize from textbook yourself. And these are all the right key formulas. And I guess comparing with the lecture, the one thing that ChatGPT doesn't have is, by the way, once you have angular frequency, you don't need a period. You can get it from here. Omega is, yeah. It doesn't have any material relating to complex exponentials, which is an extra thing that I do that you don't actually need. But I do bring, if you take physics 4B and 4C, which we will stop teaching soon. If you take physics 4B with me, I'll bring in complex exponentials when we do AC circuits. And I think it's such a useful tool that there's no reason not to introduce it even at levels where you don't technically have to, but it simplifies so many of your calculations. So yeah, it gave you the wow, yeah. So it gave you this, even though I never asked it this question. It just knew enough that when you're dealing with oscillators, you would be dealing with energy. That's pretty good. Yeah, even up to 30 degrees, it's like within 5% precision. Yeah, yeah, this is all good. Yeah, that's a good summary. Again, not to say this replaces the normal learning stuff, but let's say you've gone through that, you've summarized things for yourself, and you just want to see, hey, did I miss something? This is a good list.